I'm Mark Turner. I'm the Extension Wildlife Specialist at OSU, and today we're going to be talking about dove fields. Now, you may be wondering why that we're talking about dove fields so early in the year, but really if you're wanting to plan to have a successful dove hunt on into September and October when most of the dove hunting occurs in Oklahoma, you really need to start thinking now and start planning out on your property to make sure that you have attractive crops for the fall. There are several species in Oklahoma that can be successfully planted for dove fields, and these include things like sunflower, millets, grain sorghum, as well as corn. Now, there are differences and advantages and disadvantages to each of those, and I'd recommend that you think about the time that you're planning and how long that you have until you plan to hunt, because certainly you want to make sure that you give those crops enough time to mature. Things like sunflowers and corn typically take longer to mature than something like millet. So typically if you're really late in the year and you're getting a late start on your dove field, maybe consider planting something like millet, whereas if you're earlier in the year, you could consider something like corn or grain sorghum or sunflowers, because those take a little bit longer to grow. The main consideration for dove hunting, although there are a lot of different species that you can plant, one of the most important things that oftentimes gets overlooked is bare ground. So certainly we want to have a relatively good amount of seed in the field to attract dove. But really, if that seed is not sitting on top of primarily bare ground, doves are not going to be nearly as attracted to it. They have relatively weak legs, and they're not going to scratch at the ground like something like a quail or a turkey would. And so we need to consider having bare ground in the field. The way that we do that is by managing weeds during the summertime for a lot of crops, as well as by manipulating the crops appropriately. So for something like sunflowers or corn, keeping it relatively weed-free throughout the summer and then coming in and either mowing it, or in the case of corn, you could potentially be able to burn it. That's going to give you a really clean, good results and have seed on relatively bare soil. Millets are another great option, especially if you're in a spot where you can apply fire to that field, because if you grow the millets and then allow them to die and then burn them, of course at that point you're just going to have bare ground and seed, and that is extremely attractive to dove, especially if you time that just before you're planning on hunting. Winter wheat is another excellent option for dove hunting. Of course, that would have been planted back in the previous fall before you're planning to hunt. So about a year ahead of when you're planning to hunt over a wheat field, you would want to have that planted. But wheat is excellent because, of course, it's a very attractive food source for deer and turkeys in the fall, and even into the spring. They will eat the seed heads of certain varieties. But if you have that wheat field planted in advance, you can then very easily go in and burn it in late summer and early fall to attract doves. So again, really just having seed on bare soil is a really important consideration whenever you're going to be trying to manage for doves. Another major consideration with dove fields is making sure that you're staying within the regulations of the state that you're in. So in Oklahoma, I would certainly recommend to check with ODWC to make sure that you're complying with their baiting regulations, because there are very strict requirements for hunting doves over a field that's been manipulated compared to something like hunting deer that are not migratory birds. So be sure to check with ODWC for your regulations, and for more information on dove field management, check out the SunUp website.